Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Zero to Empire podcast. On this episode, I have Hooman Ghazanfari, and he is an executive leadership coach, and he's actually going to be going about telling us his story becoming a coach after being a firefighter, and now he's actually helping people go like coaching as well, not just saving their lives. So, thank you for being on the podcast. And my first question to you is, what actually led you to go from being a firefighter to becoming a coach and helping people through their lives that way?
It's my pleasure, and thank you for having me, Samuel. What Personal development and self-improvement has been a lifelong journey for me. I grew up with a history of um, trauma, physical abuse, emotional, and um, all kinds of abuse. And so it was very difficult for me early on to overcome that and overcome the self-limiting beliefs that embedded in me. And I think in part that's what led me into the fire service was to help other people who are I'm basically seeing them on their worst day. So that, along with the fact that I wanted to have more of a connection to a team and like a fire family, is what brought me into the fire service. But to your question of what led me into coaching, as I started to get towards the end of my career, I had been a lifelong learner and I'd learned a lot of things that I was using to mentor people in my life. And I started to think that I wanted to maybe get into mentoring young firefighters who were entering to the fire service. So I had initially hired a coach to help me uncover what I wanted to do next. So I was getting towards the end of my career, and to some extent, I'd hit like a glass ceiling and I wasn't really moving up anymore. And so I'd started to get into a rut, and I realized that I wanted to do something more. So initially it was mentoring new firefighters, and then that morphed into becoming a coach. And I realized that I had a gift where I had learned all these things along the way, and I was empathic, and I was able to come forward and help people, help them overcome obstacles and to live a better life or to perform better at work and have a more thriving career. So those were the initial things that helped me pivot to it, and it's been an amazing journey ever since.
That's great. And I'm sorry to hear about your upbringing, and it definitely became the person you are today. And I also appreciate your service and being a firefighter.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And when it comes to when you got, well, like your therapist, how did they actually play a role in helping you break through your inner blocks?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's when you when you grow up in a family like mine, it's hard to find any kind of help, support, someone else who can put a set of eyes on what you're going through and help you process it and deal with it in a meaningful way. So I basically I had bottomed out in my mid 20s. I had taken a road trip down to Southern California to see some relatives with my family, and all along the way, I was getting verbally and emotionally abused by my mom on the way down there and on the way back. So it was brutal. And it really left me in a really low, dark place. And so I really didn't have any choice but to turn to therapy. So the very next day after I got back, I contacted EAP through my employer and got in and started doing the work. Um, but what I got out of it over the last 25, 30 years has been just the insight into human behavior, how other people operate, some of their thought processes, some of the dysfunction and unhealthy environments that I had put myself in. And eventually I had to turn everything back on myself. Like, well, look, you're the one who's putting yourself in these situations. You're the one who's struggling and having a hard time getting through these. And they're by choice. I mean, it's subconscious. We don't know that we're doing it, but we're putting ourselves essentially in, I don't want to say in harm's way because it's a little too dramatic, but we're putting ourselves in these unhealthy environments because that's what we're used to. And those were some of the things that I learned along the way, was to detach from toxic relationships, unhealthy environments, and really be able to go in eyes wide open. Um, I learned a lot about myself and my own history, my own trauma, and how that was leading to the decisions I was making. And I think that's really what equips me to coach others, is that a lot of the things that they're going through, I've been through, and I can help them understand it from a different perspective than they're used to, because a lot of people haven't tried therapy, or they have, and the therapist was just sort of there and creating a place for them to talk about things, but they didn't actually get any solutions. They didn't actually move the ball down the field, if you will. So when they talk to me, I'm able to open up that space where they can talk about things on a different level, and I help them to access their thoughts, access their emotions, and understand where they're stuck.
Yeah, that's solid. And that's good that you're able to connect with them on that deeper level and have those unfortunate circumstances put you in this spot. But it's good to know that like people can relate to you, and that's nice that you can use that experience to relate to them, because it's pretty
Thank you.
common, unfortunately. And but can you actually describe a breakthrough moment you had with a client so far?
Um, I had one just last night. I was have an evening client that I met with, and he has been through a lot in his life, and a lot of it has to do with drinking, making poor decisions, and he's been down on himself a lot about it too. And so it took us a while because we were talking about his relationship with money, and I kept asking him about the relationship with money, and at first he couldn't access it. He kept talking about other things, and well, uh, I don't know, it's my wife's fault. And a lot of times we like to try and defer that attention to someone else. Like, well, look, if I can just deflect and make you think this is someone else's issue, then I don't have to look at it through my own lens of myself and who I am. But I just kept pushing. I kept pushing and asking him, like, what is your relationship with money like? Because that was really at the core of what he was struggling with in that moment. Now we were able to use it to take a look at other aspects of his life, but he finally got to the point where he said, "I don't have control over it," and
Wow.
and then we were able to take that statement, and I stopped him when he said it, and I said, "There it is. That's what I've been looking to hear from you for the last hour, is that you don't have control." The reality is that he does have control, but we had to help him understand that, and help him understand that that was the narrative that was running, that was not real. It was not the truth, but it was what he had grown up with. And then because what I told him too, Samuel, is these are symptoms, like your inability to control money, your inability to in the past control your drinking. All those different things were a symptom of an underlying issue. And for him, the underlying issue was that he grew up in a chaotic environment, and he was just very impulsive. Like, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to throw some money at this investment, see what happens. Poof, it's gone. I'm just going to drink. Now, poof, I'm getting a DUI. I'm just going to, get into these chaotic relationships, and then they end up going south. So I was able to help him understand that, first of all, these were the impulsive things that he'd done in the past that made him feel like he wasn't in control, but he actually was in control. And we were able to step back and look at his life today. And he's got a wife and 3 kids. They live in an amazing neighborhood. He makes a high income and has a high net worth. I was able to help him understand that not only are you in control right now, you've been in control for years, and you haven't realized that. And so it blew him away. But it confirmed for me what I've known forever as a coach, is that the client has the answers. I didn't know what that answer was going to be. I had formulated some thoughts in my head of like, well, I wonder what he's going to say. I bet he's going to say this. I had no idea what he was going to say until he said it. And when he said it, it was that aha moment. And as his coach, I pounced on it, and then we were able to look at it through his lens and through my lens, because that's what we do, is we kind of look at it together and understand that that was one of the key things that was holding him back. So It was an amazing moment for him. And I was very proud of him as his coach, that he was able to go there and talk about it.
Yeah, that's solid, and I'm glad that you were able to make that breakthrough with him. And definitely self-acknowledgement hurts a lot easier, is a lot harder than just blaming others. So I'm glad you're able to make that with him and make him more aware. And so when it comes to your coaching style and your coaching methods, is there a certain way you go about it that's different than traditional therapy, or how do you do that?
Yeah. So, my coaching styles, I have the 4 A's that I could go over with you. They're on my website. So if people want to go and look on my website, they can see the methodology that I use. But really what I'm listening for, and I kind of alluded to it with this last client, is I want to understand the piece that's about you, right? Look, as people will come in and, I'll call it, they filibuster. They'll come in and they'll sit and talk about whatever, right? Like, I'm having a bad day because sky's cloudy or whatever, or my boss is doing this, my wife's doing this, my dog is doing this, and I'm listening for the part that has to do with you. Like, first of all, where does it land with you? And what's your role in all this? Because if we don't understand our role in everything, then we're left blaming others. Like, well, it's so and so's fault. It's my wife's fault. It's my boss's fault. And I'm not saying like, well, look, it's your decision. You brought your wife into your life. You got to get her out. That's not it. But it's more about like understanding your role in your interpersonal relationships, your professional relationships, the decisions you make on a daily basis. And that's the lens that I work under when I'm listening in to what someone's saying. I'm listening for, first of all, where they're stuck, but also helping them understand that they are empowered to make changes. We have to know that we're empowered to make those changes. We have to know that at any given moment, I can decide to do things differently, and I can pump the brakes on what's going on. And one of the questions that I ask, and it's kind of part of our sort of exploration, is like, what are some of the options here, right? And going back to what I said earlier, what are some of the options? Like, I may have some of my own, right? But if I start to give advice, like, hang on, Samuel, let me tell you how this is going to be, and I start to march out some of the options that I think you should consider, I'm not letting you come up with your own options, because you probably have a lot of options, some you haven't even explored yet. And one of those is going to be a lot better than anything I come up with. Because if I start giving you options, that's advice giving. That's not coaching. If we're doing pure coaching, we're on your agenda. You're going to tell me what's going on. We're going to explore the options in your life, and we're going to pick the best one that you commit to, right? Like, I'm going to put it back to you. Like, well, which one of these sounds like the best one to you? Because if I start to say, well, sometimes people look for that. People look for the coach to be the parent, right? Like, you tell me, I don't know, you tell me. And typically that's someone who's been bossed around their whole life, right? Now even the boss they have now is just, telling them how it needs to be. So when they come to a coach, they want the coach to just tell them what to do. And I spot that, and I don't get baited by that. Like, I'm going to pull back from that and allow you to talk about what's going on and explore those options and find the one that's the best fit for your life.
Yeah, that's super solid. And that's a great approach to helping people get through their lives and make impact. And when it comes to the misconceptions that we talked about before this call that people actually have about you on social media, what do they include?
Yeah, so typically people think that like, I grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth, like, oh, this guy's got it made, he's got it so easy. He's not going to understand me because he's just had a very easy life. And so I think that's the part of myself that I need to talk more about, is what I've been through, the things I've had to endure and overcome. And I don't go into great detail about it because it's not the most touchy-feely stuff. It's not the greatest, most uplifting thing to talk about, but I've had to overcome a lot. And so when people first meet, I even had a neighbor of mine, and I started to tell him about some of my history and my childhood and stuff. It's like, wow, I had no idea. I thought you had it all together, and I do. I have it all together today, but it took a lot of work. It took a lot of introspection and being a student of the game of life, and just going out and getting the information that I needed to better myself. And if I hadn't done that, I don't know where I'd be today, but I knew that I had this desire to live a better life and to learn from my mistakes. And that was the path that I took, was from that hunger and desire to know what it's like to live a better life and know the path to take, that led me to take that path myself, but also to be able to help other people who are stuck and trying to find the information they need to live a better life and be more successful.
Yeah, that's very impactful, and I'm glad that you're doing that for other people today. And when it comes to what you hope people or someone listening into this episode takes away from your journey, what would that be?
You can do it too. You, regardless of what you're struggling with, and some of the stuff is more complicated than other stuff. Some of it feels like it's insurmountable. All you have to do is just step back and understand what's going on, understand what your role is in what's going on, and come up with a plan. And it has to be a viable plan. For example, if I get fired from my job, or I have a loss of income, and I tell you, well, look, next year, Samuel, I want to make six figures. It's like, okay, great, let's do it. But what's the plan? We have to come up with a viable plan. And it may take more than a year to get to that number, or whatever it doesn't always have to be monetary, but at the same time, a lot of times it is struggling. People are struggling with issues having to do with work-life balance, or even making higher income. But we have to explore what the plan is, so that we can come up with something that you can adhere to and embrace. So it's I want people to know that, first of all, you're not alone. A lot of people struggle with this stuff, and even with that being said, it's important to have someone with you on that journey. You don't have to do it by yourself. You don't have to, because I always tell people, look, the information's out there, especially today on ChatGPT. You can go and type in and say, hey, I'm lonely, I'm depressed, or I need to get motivated. And ChatGPT will spit out a bunch of information and come up with a task list for you and a bunch of helpful hints. There's, thousands of books out there about self-help and all that stuff. So the information's there, but it's the human element. And that's why I think that my profession will never be replaced by ChatGPT, because there's the empathy that goes along with what I do, and it's knowing the right question to ask. And if, like, the computer doesn't know the right question to ask, because they're not reading your face and understanding where you're stuck. So that's where my profession, and even therapists, will never be eliminated, because the computer can't understand human emotion, not yet anyway. But that's where an excellent coach, an effective coach, an effective therapist does the work. It's because they can read you, and they can tell just by the energy in the room. And a lot of my clients are on Zoom. So there's the people that I meet with in person, and the energy's there in person in the room. But even like, you're in Colorado, I'm in California, I can read your face, and I can tell when you look away and you're looking down, or you tense up, or you cringe. I can see all that, because I'm making eye contact, and I'm looking at you the whole way. So you're not alone. Get some help, and then come up with a plan that's going to be effective, that'll help you overcome what you're struggling with today.
That's some great advice. And if anyone actually wants to have that social interaction with him as a coach, we're going to actually reach out to you and become your client.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can find my website on it's at www.ghazcoaching.com, GHAZ coaching.com. And then of course, we'll post this on the conversation on LinkedIn as well, but I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, my handle is Coach Ghaz, Coach, and then _GHAZ.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. And for everyone listening and watching in, thank you for being listening and doing that for the Zero to Empire podcast. And I'll see you on the next episode.